Hi everyone, surprise! I know you don't usually see me on Sundays, but we have a special episode of Talking Sports with Jake. I'm gonna go over every team's most underrated NBA player, in my opinion. Of course, the only opinion that matters on this show. I'm just kidding. I'm just joshing. But yeah, most underrated player on every NBA team. I think I'd do a little fun little episode. So let's get started. We're gonna go team by team. You're gonna notice it's gonna be kind of a weirdish order, but I try to do it in somewhat standings order, but it's not going to be like that. It's just going to be kind of random. But here we go. So we'll start with the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm going with Drew Holiday for this one. Drew Holiday is a great player. I think he's one of the best point guards in the league. He does a lot for that Milwaukee team. This year he averaged 19 points, 5 assists, 7 rebounds. He's a great player. Now he's a point guard who can really score. He can handle the basketball. He can pass. He's a really underrated defender, really great defender. Obviously, Milwaukee's got that big three with Giannis, Middleton, and Drew Holiday. He does a really good job for the Bucks. The Bucks would not be able to be as dominant without him. Of course, they got Giannis and they got Middleton and all these guys, but Drew Holiday he's in that big three for a reason. I at times don't think he gets enough credit. He's a great player. Moving on to the Boston Celtics, I'm going with Robert Williams. Robert Williams, the Celtics, he's kind of like the steam that makes them go. You know, his numbers don't jump up the page. 8 points, 8 rebounds a game, just about a block and a half a game. But he's a guy, obviously, he's always in that lineup. But the Celtics are so much better when he's in the lineup. He is certainly one of their X factors. He's a guy, yes, he's not going to score a ton, but that was a great rim protector. He can score inside. Really good rebounder. Really good shot blocker. He did a lot of things that kind of go unnoticed in Boston. And you saw even last year in the postseason when he was in that lineup, when he was there, Boston was like a team to beat. When he wasn't there, they looked a lot more vulnerable. He's extremely underrated. And you could argue if he's healthy for the entire postseason, Boston wins the championship this year. So, most underrated player on the Celtics is definitely Robert Williams. On to the Philadelphia 76ers. Let's go with D'Anthony Melton. D'Anthony Melton's a guy who obviously came up in Memphis. He's been in the Philly a couple of years. He's a guy who he's always been a really good defender, but his offensive game has come a long way. He averaged a little over 10 points a game this year, shooting 39% from three. He's a really good defender. You know, Philly's depth, I think, is a reason why some people knock them, including myself. But I really like this kid, D'Anthony Melton. He's really good. He's a nice number 2 point guard to have. He's a nice 3-and-D guy. D'Anthony Melton, I think, is a real underrated player. The Cleveland Cavaliers, Darius Garland, I think is real underrated. Garland is an absolute stud. This year he averaged 21 points and 7 assists a game. He's a great player. Cleveland's a team that's got a couple underrated guys, but I went with Garland. He's a guy who's an all-star caliber player, was an all-star last year. The sky's the limit for this kid. Absolute star in the making in Cleveland. The many young guys that Cleveland has, and he's probably one of the better ones that they have. And what's a really good young core in Cleveland. He can score with the best. Really good passer. Really good court vision. I'm going with Darius Garland. Now from the New York Knicks. First of all, go Knicks. They took game one last night against Cleveland. Keep up the good work, Knicks. I'm going with Josh Hart. The acquisition of Josh Hart has been, words can't describe how huge that has been for the New York Knicks. Hart this year is averaging 9 points and 7 boards, and averaging 10 points and 7 boards since the Knicks trade for him, made the trade with the New Orleans Pelicans. Hart has done everything the Knicks have asked him to. He's scored a little bit. He can shoot the ball a little bit. He's a great perimeter defender. He's done a really good job rebounding. The Knicks at Abadellum were kind of not floundering, but they're clearly they need something to bring it all together. That was very inconsistent, very mediocre. All right, yeah, they would make the play-in, maybe sneak out of the play-in, but they wouldn't get out of the first round. Ever since they brought Hart in, they won like 8 or 9 games in a row right when they got Hart, and they've been a completely different team in the second half. They've ended up getting the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference, and now they have a shot to be a really good Cleveland Cavaliers team in the first round of the playoffs. I think possibly even take a game or two off the Bucks and the Celtics in the second round. So Josh Hart, what he has done, I can't tell you what he has done. Obviously, Jalen Brunson's had an incredible year. One of the breakout stars of this season. But he obviously he's gotten his flowers, rightfully so. Josh Hart, words can describe how big of a piece that he's been, and he's definitely flown under the radar. Onto the Miami Heat. I'm going to go with Caleb Martin. Caleb Martin actually had a real nice year. He averaged 9 points a game for the Heat. He does a lot of things that kind of go unnoticed. He's a really good 3-and-D guy at times. Does not get enough credit for what he does. He can really shoot the 3 ball. Like I said, he's playing, let's say maybe 25 minutes. He's getting, over 9 points a game on average. He's a good perimeter defender. Kind of fits what the Heat do. Like the Heat love the 3-and-D guys. I think that was a big reason why they were one shot away from going to the NBA Finals last year. I mean, you had guys like Jimmy Butler who can do both ends, Bam Adebayo. You had a guy like PJ Tucker who's a great 3-and-D guy. Who was a great 3-and-D guy before he fell off this year in Philly. So Claremont just really fits what the Heat do. Kind of similar to Josh Hart. I think that's why he's really to pick up for next. He really fits what they do. He fits the Tom Thibodeau system. Caleb Martin just fits what the Heat do very, very well. On to the Brooklyn Nets. I'm going with Nick Claxton. I really like Claxton's game, obviously. You got every big guy he feels like now shoot the three. You got, everyone saying you got to shoot the three, got to shoot the three. But you gotta remember, not everyone can be Nikola Jokic, not everyone can be Karl-Anthony Towns, not everyone can be Joel Embiid. There is still a role for guys like Nick Claxton, who, are guys who, are gonna kind of like live in the paint, give you, are gonna get their points in the paint, protect the rim, block shots, kind of like true centers, a little more older school. Just, they can't, be like, the best player on your team anymore, and like the number one option on your team, like they used to be able to, like, 20, 30 years ago. But they do still have a role, and I do think it's important to have, that paint presence in today's league. I mean, not as important. It was, 1,000,000% necessary about 20, 30 years ago. Even 10 years ago. But still think it's important. Claxton this year, he averaged 12 points and 9 rebounds. He got a chance to play a little more. They made the coaching change. I always thought Steve Nash, he really didn't put together good rotations in Brooklyn. I thought Jacques Vaughn has distributed the men a little bit better in Brooklyn. He's giving Claxton a little bit more playing time, and it's worked. He's a really good rim protector. He can score inside. He's got a decent mid range, really good rebounder. He's a big reason as to why the Nets, despite trading away Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and despite the tumultuous year they've had, are still the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. On to the Atlanta Hawks. I'm going to go with Bogdan Bogdanovic. He got a 4-year extension earlier in the year for a reason. He's a really good player. Obviously, Atlanta, they're a team that obviously has disappointed the last 2 years after going to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of years ago. Last year they were, they've been in the play-ins 2 years in a row, and for the second year, they're most likely obviously going to get creamed by Boston. They're going to get beat up in the first round for the second year in a row. They're going to the Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, they made a mid-season coaching change. Trae Young might be on the trade block, but Bogdanovic is a nice piece. He's a really good shooter. He shot 40% from 3 and 14 points a game. It's something he's kind of always done. But, when you talk about, like, the sharpshooter of the game, obviously guys like Steph and Dame and Clay are going to get their flowers, obviously, more than well-deserved. But sometimes the guys that, are just there, to, for your spot for three-point shooters, the guys that are going to give you 14, 15 points on 4 or 5 threes a game, 40% from 3, and they're going to do it every night. Sometimes those guys don't quite get the attention is because everyone's focused on, like, the crazy thing that Stephen Curry does. I think Bogdan Bogdanovic is one of them. He's a major piece of the Atlanta team. So Chicago Bulls, going with Nikola Vucevic. He's a tiny bit older now, but he still averaged 17 points and 11 rebounds. He's a free agent. I think he should have a very robust market. He's a great player. Vucevic, he's a great offensive-minded big guy, and he's not the best defender in the world, but he's got you know what you're getting. He's an offensive-minded big guy. You could argue maybe he should put a 4, not the 5, but I think if you put him at the 4, he can be a huge piece on a contending team. He's a double machine. He can give you 20 and 10 any night. Really good player. A guy who I feel like is always flown under the radar. Really good player. The Toronto Raptors are going with Pascal Siakam. Siakam's a guy I really think because Toronto is not a huge market for basketball. Obviously, they're a hockey country. Their team is bad. I mean, the Raptors did struggle this year, but even like when they won the championship a couple years ago, or last year they were a solid team. They were like the sixth or the seventh. I think it was the sixth best team in the East. They really haven't. They don't get as much attention because Canada, even as a country, isn't a basketball country. I feel like if Siakam played in a big market, he would be getting like a ton of attention. He this year put up 24 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and that's nothing out of the ordinary for him. And he just doesn't get enough attention. He might be the most underrated player at his position in the NBA. I think one of the best power forwards in the NBA. The guy who's 7 feet tall, can shoot the three, can defend. He's athletic, can pass the basketball. He does anything you need him to do. Absolute beast. Great player. Pascal Siakam. For the Indiana Pacers, I'm going with Miles Turner. I'm going to go with Miles Turner. A lot of people said this and that about Miles Turner, but he's a guy, for years we thought, oh, he might get traded, and then of course he just signed his extension. He's a real good, solid player. I think he's a really good, like, stretch 4, stretch 5. He can really score. He's one of the better scoring big guys in the league today. He averaged 18 points and 7 rebounds. He's a really, really good player. He's a nice piece for Indiana to have. I know Indiana, after a hot start, they kind of fell off and ended up missing the playoffs entirely. But they got a lot of young pieces there. They do have a bright future there. I think Miles Turner should definitely be part of it. He's a really good player. On to the Washington Wizards. Wizards, their team has been in a funk for a while. Team had probably needs to trade away Bradley Beal. This one was a little tough. I'm going with Kyle Kuzma. I know I just kind of crapped down the air day with talking with Justin and Ryan, saying he's he's not the best player in the world. He's a bit mediocre, but I do think he falls on the way a little bit. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I do think he's improved a lot, which Justin Ryan and I did mention it on yesterday. We did mention that he has improved. He actually averaged 21.7 rebounds here. He improved a lot. He's turned into a solid scorer. I said, I think he doesn't have a little bit too much for a guy who's really only about a solid third option on a good team. He may not put up those numbers on a good team. Washington's not a very good team next to Bradley Beal. He's really the only guy that's really scoring over there. So if you put him on a good team, he probably doesn't quite put up those numbers. You're not going to get him the ball as much. But I do think he can be a solid third option. He's a guy who's kind of floundered with the Lakers like a lot of young players last few years have, and he's another guy. Seems a lot of these guys, D'Lo, of course, is back there. Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram have left LA and kind of blossomed. Kuzma kind of has to. He's turned into a solid third scoring option. As for the Orlando Magic, I'm going with Bol Bol. Obviously, Bol Bol is a guy who we all saw the talent when he was in college. We all saw it. Clearly it was there. And the guy who's 7 feet tall, can shoot for 3 and dribble. I mean, that's unheard of. The guy who was never able to stay on the court, got bounced around from team to team. He was in Denver, he bounced around. Eventually, we went to Orlando. He finally got a chance to play this year, and he actually did some nice things. He averaged 9 points and 5 rebounds. I'm not sure if he'll ever, reach the complete ceiling, which we all knew the sky was limit for him when he came out of college, or how much if he put to college, or when he came out of college, or wherever he went, I'm not sure if it was overseas or in college. But he's still a guy who's he is still a 7-footer who can dribble, and he's a solid shooter, which is very scary for a guy his size. I think he's a solid piece to have, and he's still extremely young on a team in the Orlando Magic that has an incredible young core. I think could be in the playoffs next year. And Bol Bol, I have the confidence one on the radar. Okay, the Detroit Pistons. As bad as they were this year, I think James Wiseman, I thought, played some good basketball. I'm going with James Wiseman for the most underrated player on the Pistons. He averaged 10 points and 5 rebounds overall. He averaged 12 points and 8 rebounds after coming to Detroit. He actually played very well. And people say Wiseman's a bust, he's a bust. Yes, he's had a not so great start to his career. Keep in mind, this guy was a top recruit. We get recruited by Penny Hardaway at Memphis. He goes to Memphis. Then we get a glimpse of him, like, oh my god, this guy's crazy. Then he had the whole recruiting violations. He got suspended for that whole thing. And then he came back. He played briefly, and then he was like, you know what? I'm gonna stay out the rest of the year. He pretty much knew he was gonna be a top pick in the draft. Golden State taking him second overall. When guys go that high in the draft, the team has a high pick because they're bad, because they won 20 games. Team like this year, the Rockets, Pistons, Spurs, those teams. And the expectation is they're gonna play 30 minutes a game right away. Because the Warriors were very weird. It was they just come off winning 3 out of the last 5 finals, but then Kevin Durant leaves in free agency, and then Clay was out the entire season. Steph missed a lot of time, and there's all these other things that happens. So Golden State ended up floundering and finishing with the least worst record and getting the second pick, and then of course the year after you got Steph, you get Steph and Clay healthy, and then they had some bench depth, and all of a sudden this team looked like a top team again. Of course, they ended up winning the whole thing. So then Wiseman he gets drafted second overall, and all of a sudden, okay, you're on the bench, and he's also had a lot of injuries as well. It's been a really weak transition. Also, the transition from college to NBA is gonna be hard. It's not supposed to be easy. I mean, the players are better, the game's faster. I've got to go through it. It's self-explanatory. But it was like 10 times harder for Wiseman because he, all of a sudden he dropped second overall. He's like, oh yeah, here we go, second pick. I'm going to a team that has won 3 championships in the last 6 years, and they're like, all right, have fun playing 10 minutes a game. He's like, oh, 10 minutes a game, what? It's kind of been nice to see him go to Detroit, a team that's out of the race, give him a chance to play, and he put some good basketball. He's still extremely. I still think the sky's the limit, and I still think he can reach the full potential, which we know at his full potential, he is a game changer. Charlotte Hornets. I'm going with Terry Rozier. I've always liked Rozier's game. Yes, he's not a good defender. You're going to be worse off defensively with him on the court, but he's a really good offensive-minded point guard. He averaged 21 points a game this year for Charlotte. Ever since he left Boston and signed with Charlotte, he's turned into a really nice player. I've always liked his game. Charlotte obviously is going into a rebuild. Michael Jordan's trying to sell the team. There's very few players on my team you should probably keep outside, of course, LaMelo Ball. But I think Terry Rozier might be one of them. He's still in his prime. He's a guy that can score. That's gonna. He has enough crazy athleticism. Obviously, isn't gonna defend, but he's a guy that can give you 20 points, give you 20, 25 every night. I like Terry Rozier. I think he's an underrated player. On to the Denver Nuggets. I'll go with Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon did some nice things for Denver this year. I know, yes, he did ruin a dunk contest, and he's very annoying with that. Should have taken him 4th overall back in my day. I don't know about 4th overall back when he was drafted, but he's a really good player. He averaged 16 points and 5 rebounds this year. He's a really good defender. He's a solid scorer. He can rebound. He's very athletic. We've all seen it. He's fun to watch. I think he's Denver obviously has not given Jokic a lot of help. One of the few guys that they've given him that has been able to stay on the court and provide consistent help in some way, shape, or form has been Aaron Gordon. He does some nice things for the Denver Nuggets team. Is obviously the main reason Denver's where they are is because of Nikola Jokic. But I think another main reason is definitely Aaron Gordon. The guy who's a great defender, and he's I think an underrated scorer, and of course he's very athletic. For the Memphis Grizzlies, it's Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones is a guy who pretty much is universally agreed upon NBA fan. He's really underrated. I mean, before they had Ja, he played behind Mike Conley, who was an all-star in Memphis. Now he plays behind Ja Morant, so he obviously hasn't got the attention that he deserved. But he's a really good player. He averaged 10 points and 5 assists this year. That's kind of why he's in his whole career. He's a really good defender, solid scorer, can shoot, really good passer. He's one of the best number 2 point guards in the league. For Sacramento Kings, I'm going with De'Aaron Fox. For a shout out to De'Aaron Fox, Kings took Game 1 against Golden State last night. First playoff win for them in 17 years. De'Aaron Fox set a record for most points in their playoff debut, 38 points. He is an incredible point guard. 25 points and 6 assists were his numbers this year. That's what he averaged per game this year. He's another guy because he's played on the Kings, who for years have been so bad. He's flown on the radar. If you fuse in a big mark on to Pascal Siakam, he would be getting all this attention. I think could get even some award consideration. He is an absolute beast. One of the best point guards in the league. He is insane, incredible scorer, really good passer. He is dangerous out there on the court. Very hard to guard, fun to watch. One of the more underrated players in the league. So the Phoenix Suns, I'm going with Cameron Payne. I like Cameron Payne. You know, he kind of put himself on the map in the playoffs a year or two ago, really stepping up. You know, Phoenix doesn't have a ton of depth anymore if you traded it for Kevin Durant. One of the guys they still have is Cameron Payne, who I think is a really nice number 2 point guard. Kind of flies under the radar. Got a lot of stars out there in Phoenix. Book, Durant, all those guys. Cameron Payne here, he averaged 10 points a game, and he's not playing that many men. I mean, he's, you know, they got Chris Paul, who though is older. We all know what he's done in his career, and obviously he's a big name. And Devin Booker, you know, he's not playing that many men. He's putting up 10 points a game. He's a nice piece off the bench for the Phoenix Suns. So the Los Angeles Clippers, I'm going with Norman Powell. Obviously, the Clippers, you always focus on Kawhi and Paul George, and they're in the lineup, and things are always happening over there. But Norman Powell's a really solid piece. This year, he averaged 17 points a game on 47% shooting and 39% from the line. For a role player, that is really, really good. He's the guy who I've always really liked. I've always liked Norman Powell back when he was in Toronto and now the Clippers. He's a really nice piece for the Clippers to have. And yeah, he kind of flies on the radar because of the stars there, but he's a major piece of what they do, Norman Powell, for sure. The Golden State Warriors, which one was tough because they got a lot of big names over there that of course get a lot of attention. Steph, Clay, Draymond, just go to MLS. But I actually like Donte DiVincenzo. He's a guy who I've always liked ever since he had that crazy game in the national championship with Villanova. He was on my team with Brunson, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart. That won the whole thing a few years back. That absolutely incredible team. You know, he had that big game in the national championship. You know, he's not playing a lot of men. He's playing behind Steph and Clay. He still averaged 9 points a game on 39% shooting from 3. He's a really good perimeter defender. Golden State loves their 3-and-D guys. That was one of the reasons why they won the championship last year, because of their ability not only to shoot the 3. Obviously, you got Steph Curry, you got Klay Thompson back eventually. You know, Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins stepped up, but their ability to defend the 3 was another underrated aspect, and DiVincenzo does that. He fits what they do. He's a nice little player to have. For Dallas Mavericks, as disappointing as the year was, I really like Christian Wood. He's going to be a free agent, and I hope he gets out of that mess in Dallas. He's a great player. He averaged 16 points and 7 rebounds, and I think if he goes to another team, he can put up even bigger numbers. This is a bit of an odd comparison, but you look at a guy like Jalen Brunson, who was a guy who's kind of like he's a mediocre third scorer in Dallas. You know, the best he ever did was his last year there. Last year, put up 15 points a game, and of course, he stepped up in the postseason, averaging 21. I think he averaged 21 a game in the postseason, something like that. But he's a guy who, because Luka always has the ball in his hands, Brunson was able to have the ball in hand. He goes to the next where he has the ball in his hands more, and of course, he put up 24 points a game and looks like an absolute superstar, which of course he is. But I really like Christian Wood, one of the more underrated big guys in the league. Very dangerous scorer, really good rebounder, can protect the rim, really good player. When Shaquille O'Neal on live television says, I owe you an apology. I owe you an apology. I was not familiar with your game. They basically saying, yeah, I wasn't too familiar with you, but damn, you're a player, my guy. Shaquille O'Neal saying that, when Shaq's saying that, you know they're doing something right. He's a great player, Christian Wood. For Oklahoma City Thunder, it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Because of the Thunder, how bad they've been the last 2 years, Shai doesn't kind of fly on the radar. If he was on a better team, I think he'd be up for MVP. He averaged 31 points a game this year, Shai. People don't realize that. He should be first team All NBA. The only guards in the NBA that are better than him are probably Luka, who I say is a bit overrated, a hot take. I think that was last week, and I made it on my show. But still top 7 player in the world. He's still a great player. Outside of him, Maybe Dame. Maybe Donovan Mitchell. Like, he's probably a top 4 guard in the league, and he does not get talked about enough. He's an absolute assassin, absolutely insane. He will give you 30 to 35 points plus 5 assists every single night. Absolute stud. I loved him coming out of Kentucky. Absolute beast. Give my man some more credit. For the Utah Jazz, I think it's Lauri Markkanen. Big year from Markkanen, complete break. I've always liked his game. Never really, didn't really gel in Minnesota. That was kind of a mess up. That was kind of or Chicago where he was traded from Minnesota, got drafted. Right after he got drafted, that was kind of a weird situation. Had injury, goes to Cleveland. He actually played well, but he kind of had trouble staying healthy. And he goes into Spy trade, and he has absolutely got average 25 points and 8 rebounds. He's a big guy who could shoot incredibly well, great scorer, good rebounder. For really to shoot the ball at that height is very, very scary and very hard to guard. He should be the most improved player this year, in my opinion. I love Lauri Markkanen, very underrated. For New Orleans Pelicans, I'm going with Jonas Valanciunas. Valanciunas is a guy that always is flowing under the radar. He's a guy that can give you like 17, 18, 10 every single night. He's a 7-footer who's an underrated shooter. Good scorer, great rebounder, really, really good rim protector. Nice locker room guy. Guy who obviously won a champion. I was an underrated part of those Raptors teams. Much sure who's on the championship team. I forget. But he's always been a really underrated player. I've always really liked his game. Fun to watch. Big man. He's a really good player. I think one of the most underrated players in the league. The Minnesota Timberwolves, I think it's Jaden McDaniels. McDaniels here, his defense is incredible. I don't think he got enough credit. He has developed into one of the best defenders in the entire NBA. I was honestly a little disappointed that he was not a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. Kind of wish he was. And not only that, he averaged 12 points a game. It's not like he can't score. He's a pretty decent scorer as well. And I think he's a big piece to the Minnesota team. Well, obviously he's a little bit in shambles right now. The Gobert trade so far has not worked out. The fight they had. I can't imagine they get past Denver in the first round. They have a disappointing year for them. But Jaden McDaniels, I like what he's done. Great defender, and he can score. He's an underrated player for sure. With the Lakers, it's Austin Reeves. I think it's Austin Reeves. Obviously, LeBron and AD are going to get all the attention, especially LeBron. We don't got to go into that. Everyone jokes about Austin Reeves, or like he's like like guys in the Lakers all of a sudden pop off. But Austin Reeves, he's really showed out this year for the Lakers. Like seriously, this year he's averaged 13 points a game on 52% shooting and 39% from 3. He's been really good. And the Lakers might lose him. They might not have the money to re-sign him. He's going to get a nice contract. I'm hearing, if he gets 60 to 70 million, you might not be able to re-sign him. I'm hearing he can get at least 50 million. Which I don't think is out of the question at all. He's developed into a really good 3-point shooter on the bench, and I really like what he's done. He's actually been, I think, a really underrated piece for this Lakers team. Obviously, yes, LeBron's still a great player. When AD's been healthy, he can still do a lot of good things, of course. The deal acquisition has been huge. But I think a main reason why the Lakers have been able to turn this thing around, look like they're going to miss the play-ins again, and it'll be the first play-in team and possibly be a threat in the playoffs, is because of Austin Reeves. He's done so many good things for this team. For the Portland Trailblazers, let's go with Anthony Simons. He has done a lot of good things for the Portland Trailblazers. He's this year averaged 21 points a game on 44% shooting and 37% from 3. He is a great player. I'm not saying him and Dame can be like Dame and CJ, but kind of similar. I think he's really underrated. A really good young player who can shoot the lights out. I think the sky's the limit for him. As for Houston Rockets, I think it's Alfred Sengun. I really like his game. He's another guy. Comes from Nick Claxton. Yeah, he's not shooting a lot of threes, and all these big guys are shooting threes now. But again, those guys who are going to score, get all their points in the paint and grab rebounds and block shots. I do think there is still a role for them in this game. And I really like Sengun here. He averaged 14 points and 9 rebounds a game. Especially when he's here kind of similar to Nick Claxton, where he does have a bit of a mid range. He's still really young. He's very athletic. Really good inside scorer, great rebounder, good shot blocker, can protect the rim. I really like his game out for Sengun. Last but not least, the San Antonio Spurs, Keldon Johnson. Keldon Johnson, he averaged 22 and 5 this year, and that's not that far off from his career averages. In fact, it's even higher than his career averages. He's actually a solid player. I mean, would he put someone on our team now? He would not. He absolutely would not. San Diego's got nobody. He's the only guy that's scoring over there. But I think you put him on a good team. He could be a solid role player. I really like him. He's a solid scorer. He's a really good offensive rebounder, especially for his size. Keldon Johnson's the most underrated player on the Spurs. All right, that is the NBA most underrated player on every team segment. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time, so long. Have a great day.